It's MG Rob back with you, and today we're going to be taking a quick look at the 73B that had the oil pressure problems, because I've started on the laundry list of stuff that needs done, and I wanted to go through what I've been doing to it. So you might have noticed when I was trying to start this thing on that last video how hard it was to start. The timing was way too advanced on it. Now the guy who put this on it also put a Pertronics in the distributor. But he obviously did it in place, never even pulled the distributor, because the distributor is pretty manky and gunky, and the timing was sitting at like 43 degrees initial timing, and it wouldn't advance. You rev it up and it actually would lose like 2 degrees, and I had a hard time getting it out of there. So I got it out of there, cleaned it up, took it all apart, worked on the advance mechanism, got it loosened up and lubricated, so now it actually advances like it's supposed to, and I got it set for 34 degrees total timing. Now, it still needs a vacuum advance put in it. I don't have one sitting here right now, but at least the mechanical part's working. And then the alternator was junk, and it doesn't have the bracket here, and you can get away with that as long as it's a cast iron replacement water pump. If it's one of the aluminum pumps, you don't want to do that. Now, if this thing's here long enough for me to get my next order here, I will be putting a bracket on one because I got one coming in my next order. So when he dropped the car off and we started talking about what we're going to need to do to it, I opened the bonnet and noticed right away that the master cylinder was low on fluid, but it was low on both the front and the rear reservoirs. So that would tell me it's not just a wheel cylinder leak, which is the most common issue on these. So I ended up pulling the cover here just to look, make sure, and it was dry. Nothing's leaking out the end of the master cylinder, but I noticed it was wet around the PWDA switch, which is the pressure differential warning assembly. So pulled the switch out, and I could just watch it slowly seep out of this. We're here. Now, when you are seeing that happen, replacing the switch does nothing for it. This does not seal it at all. It'll just continue to leak. So don't waste your money putting a switch in it if you're leaking from there. I see it all the time online. What it is this needs rebuilt. Now, some people will go ahead and put a really short bolt in there with a washer and lock that down, and that'll keep it from leaking. But the rebuild on it is super easy. Once the system's empty, you just take that out, and it's just two O-rings on either side of a little shuttle valve, because the shuttle valve slides back and forth. If you lose fluid on one side, it'll slide that way, or pressure on one side, it'll slide that way and kick the light on. And it's just two little O-rings in there. Now, if you got in one of the earlier assemblies, those seals are not available, so you buy a kit that has a whole piston assembly in it, which is more expensive, but it's still under 30 bucks for the kits. So we went ahead and did that on this one, put a new seals in it, because this guy doesn't want to cut corners. He wants the car to finally be right. Now, when I did look at the rear wheel cylinders, I did notice a tiny bit of weepage out of them, but I was only getting a tiny bit of weepage out of them because the brake lines were crushed. This thing had been towed a few times, and one of the problems with these cars is if they put the hook on the rear end housing, which a lot of flatbedders will do, this is what happens. They just get crushed flat as a pancake. So that was the one side, and there's the other side. So almost no fluid whatsoever was getting to them, and we don't know if that was before he bought it or since he's bought it. It has been towed a couple of times since he bought it. So we ended up doing all new lines across the rear, and I had seen that so many times over the years that I actually bought a really good flaring tool so that I could make those lines, make them fit just the way they're supposed to be, exactly the right length, and do it right. But while I was in there, what we also did was, since the shoes, at least on the one side, were just completely soaked with brake fluid, and the adjusters on this car, someone had chewed them up really bad trying to adjust them with vice grips. So I ended up having to put new adjusters on there and shoes as well as wheel cylinders. But now we got his rear brakes situated. The car stops a lot better than it used to, feels a lot better. And he also said that his window just kept coming off track, and he had taken the door panel off, put it on track, and it came right back off again. What happened was, see that kink right there? What somebody had done was, this car used to be black tulip and it's been changed to the red, and evidently when they had it apart and put it all back together, they had the bracket at the bottom of the door on the wrong side, going the wrong direction, which pulled this too far back, so it wasn't holding the window. And then evidently they just reached in there, grabbed that and yanked it and pulled it forward to try to tighten it up. So all it was actually doing was making it really tight right here, and then it would fall out. So I could probably straighten this, but I had a good used one laying here, so I just threw that one in there, and now it works exactly like it's supposed to and doesn't fall off track anymore. Now while we're in here, four-way flashers weren't working. He was having problems with his turn signals, so I got all this tore apart now to work on that, which it turned out that the wire was pulled out of here. This is broken, and that's why those weren't working. But he also wanted me to go ahead and put some speakers in it, because it already has the holes. You can't hear the radio because it's got some little speakers back here, but so I got some speakers I'm going to put in here, and we've been running, got all that tore apart so I can get in there and do all that stuff. And then he wanted, his last car got rear-ended and that got totaled. So he's really worried about driving this thing and getting rear-ended again. So he had bought some lights. These are lights that do turn and brake, and he wanted to somehow mount them up here some way, shape, or form. But the ones that he bought I don't think are going to work really well. So I picked up these lights, which are actually marine lights, but they were sold to be put on motorcycles, and they're the same thing, two brightnesses. You can use turn signals on one brightness, brake on another, or running lights and brake, whatever, however you want to set it up. But I think I can make this, attach this somehow to here, either here or here, and it'll be a much cleaner, neater installation and work just as well for him. I haven't quite figured it out yet, but we're working on that. Now, he also said he wanted me to test drive the car because it didn't feel right. Steering didn't feel right over bumps and stuff. And I gave the car a little push on the front end and knew exactly what the problem was, because it bounced like crazy. But took it for a test drive, and yeah, over bumps, the steering's flopping around. Well, obviously both front shocks were leaking. I had a pair of good used shocks sitting here. I could put them on for him, get it done quickly, and for much cheaper than ordering new ones. And for this car, I think it's a much more cost-effective way of doing it, and I think he'll be fine on this one.